and we're back for episode 1.7. Our episode begins with this extra scene between Jamie and Tywin. Of course, Jamie doesn't have a point of view until the third book, so what exactly Jamie was doing when he fled King's Landing isn't really shown to us. We know he led an army in the Whispering Woods and gets captured. That's about it. Now in this scene, Jamie seems to display that he has quite a few daddy issues. He and Tywin don't see eye to eye. Not that the Lannister siblings don't have daddy issues in the book, but it's expanded greatly in the show. In this scene, Jamie seems overpowered by his father. In the book, Jamie and Tywin only share one scene, but Jamie's not overpowered in that scene at all. Now the scene also boldly gives Tywin a motivation. He's doing everything for the Lannister name, and that's why he needs to go to war over Tyrion's abduction. However, in the book, Tywin's motivations are a bit murkier. He really wanted to foster Sweet Robin, and he has a weird interest in Harrenhal, and he had already hired 2 foreign sellsword companies. At minimum, I would say that Tywin knew war was coming, and had already made preparations for war. It seems Pycelle was a better spy than he lets on, and knew the ins and outs of King's Landing, and was informing Tywin about it. Next, we have the big coming clean scene between Cersei and Ned. Now in the book, this scene happens in the Godswood in the evening. Ned said he wanted the meeting there so that the gods could see them. Now the King's Landing Godswood doesn't have any werewoods in it, so I'm not sure if Bloodraven and the Children of the Forest were able to see Ned. However, there are other ways to see people, including through animal eyes and glass candles. The scene ends with the stars coming out, which makes me wonder if Quaithe was watching them. The scene in the book also includes Cersei trying to seduce Ned, which he resists. It also includes Cersei spewing some very interesting rumors about Ned. She claims that Ned raped and pillaged in Dorne and stole Ashara Dane's baby. This is astoundingly odd, as Barristan Selmy claims that Ashara Dane's baby was stillborn. Now, I personally think that Ashara Dane is Jon's mother. However, Barristan Selmy also thinks Dany looks like Ashara Dane, and so some people think that Ashara Dane is Dany's mother. It's just a big mess of mystery babies. Now next we get this scene where Littlefinger talks about his past and his love for Catelyn, and this is juxtaposed against whores having sex for some reason. Littlefinger explains that he loves Catelyn, had a duel with Brandon Stark and lost, and therefore is no longer going to play by their rules. In the book, we're left wondering if Littlefinger actually loved Cat or not. He never mourns her. Instead, he switches his obsession to Sansa pretty quickly. Which makes me wonder, was he obsessed with Cat, or was he obsessed with who he thought Cat was? Littlefinger's life has been dominated by Cat, Lysa, and Sansa. 3 red-haired Tully girls. Is there something special about that line and that color of hair? He has no interest in any other women or Arya. So what is it about red-haired Tullys? Or what is it about red-haired Wents? You see, Catelyn and Lysa's mother was a Went, and the Wents were the lords of Harrenhal. Littlefinger, like Tywin, has a weird obsession with that castle. Meanwhile, back in Winterfell, we have this extra scene where Theon gets all creepy with Osha. Now in the book, Osha is taken advantage of by the cook, but she doesn't seem to mind that much. Osha's almost rape is interrupted by Luwin, and they talk about the others for a bit. Now Osha claims that the others have been sleeping for thousands of years, and have now woken up. Now I doubt this story quite a bit. Craster has been sacrificing to the others for at least a few decades, so a recent waking of the others is not the thing driving the wildlings south. But clearly something has happened to cause the others to start attacking the wildlings. But so far we don't know quite what it is. Meanwhile at the wall we get this extra scene where Benjen's horse improbably returns without Benjen. In the book, the wall has sent out ranging parties, but no one has found Benjen. He just vanished. And a somewhat important plot from the book has been cut. In the book, Jon realizes that Sam is likely to fail badly at most positions and will likely get himself killed. And so Jon goes to Maester Aemon and explains that he and his friends have been protecting Sam, and he requests that Maester Aemon take on Sam as an apprentice. Now this plot is significant in 2 ways. One, I think it convinces the upper management of the Wall to take on Jon as Mormont's personal steward. Jon's desire to protect his brothers shows Aemon that he has what it takes for command. It also makes an enemy of Chet. Chet had been tending the ravens for Aemon before, thought it was a cushy job, and is furious that Sam takes it from him. Meanwhile, back in King's Landing, Robert has been mauled by a boar. We have this extra scene with Joffrey visibly upset over his dying father, and Robert saying that he should have taught Joffrey how to be a man. Now in the book, we don't actually know Joffrey's relationship with his father. Robert at one point says he's scared of the things that come out of Joffrey's mouth. So Book Robert doesn't seem to think that Joffrey's weak. But Book Jamie also seems to think that Joffrey is eager for Robert's approval. and is therefore trying to mimic all of Robert's cruelties. This is a big deal as it's the primary motivation for Joffrey supposedly hiring a catspaw to attack Bran. With both characters now dead, it's unlikely that we'll ever find out if Joffrey was really looking up to his father and hired a catspaw to impress him. Now I should say the death of Robert is a bit suspicious. Cersei and Lancel supposedly murdered Robert by getting him drunk. Now I don't care if someone is blackout drunk. How can you guarantee that a boar is going to stab somebody? Isn't it more likely that Robert would sprain an ankle or sit down next to a tree and fall asleep? Getting somebody drunk is a horrible, horrible way to murder somebody. The probability of success is just too darn low. However, Cersei is pretty stupid, so I don't doubt that she made that plan, but I think she unknowingly had some help. As we know, in our universe, people can skin change into animals. In the book, Robert claims that the gods sent the boar, and he also stabs the boar in the eye and calls it a bastard. A one-eyed bastard who's posing as a god does describe Bloodraven. Now, Robert's death parallels Lyanna's death quite a bit. They both die in a bed of blood in front of Ned, saying, "Promise me, Ned." And at least Robert's last commands were about Daenerys. Were Lyanna's as well? Ned leaves Robert and runs into Barristan, who's riddled with guilt because he's let the king die. Now, in other videos, I've talked about something called the Jamie dilemma. With so many vows, what do you do when they contradict? Barristan vowed to protect the king, but he also vowed to obey the king. It all kind of reminds me of Asimov's 3 laws of robotics. You can try to make simple laws, but the world is messy. Ned immediately goes to Varys and asks for Daenerys to be spared, but Varys says those birds have flown. Which leads us to Daenerys off in the Dothraki Sea. Now in this scene, Daenerys is trying to use prophecy to convince Drogo to invade Westeros. She tells him that the stallion will ride to the ends of the earth. Now in the book, Viserys says that the prophecy is a mummer's farce, so I do wonder if Illyrio planted this prophecy. If he did, the prophecy doesn't do a very good job in convincing anyone to head west. The prophecy also mentions milkmen, who are the Qartheen, and Daenerys specifically says that Drogo had a desire to attack east, not west. And along with prophecy and Drogo, Jorah wants to head east to Asshai. Dany asks Jorah to help convince Drogo to head west, but Jorah says he can't do that Dothraki do things in their own time. Of course, this isn't actually true. Jorah later advises Drogo on exactly where he should attack. It all points to the idea that Illyrio never wanted Viserys or Dany to sit the Iron Throne. He wanted to get rid of them in the east. That is, until Varys tells Illyrio to change his plans. And thus we have this assassination attempt. Quite suddenly, Illyrio and Varys want the Dothraki to head west. And what better way than a fake attempt on Dany's life? Now some people wonder how much Jorah was in on this attempt. And I would say 100% completely. In the book, Jorah leaves Dany and she wanders the market for half the morning. Then, right when she's about to drink her wine, Jorah returns. The coincidence is too much. Jorah definitely set everything up, and Dany's life was never in danger. Meanwhile, at the Wall, everyone is ready to take their vows. What's missing here is that the Wall actually has a sept, and a septon, as nearly everyone in the Watch follows the faith of the Seven. Now, as in the book, Jon is the only follower of the old gods, and thus he needs to head north of the Wall to the Heart Tree. Sam somewhat converts to the religion of the old gods, but I find it very strange that there's no other Northerners. Of all of the people in the Seven Kingdoms, you'd think that Northerners would most appreciate the Wall to stop wildling invasions. So where are they? I would at least expect about 1 in 7 to be Northerners. Later on, when a new class is about to graduate, again, there's no Northerners except for one boy from Moletown. Why don't Northerners want to join the Night's Watch? Now, Jon is named a steward, and Alliser gives a mocking grin to him. Now, this happens in the book as well, and I never understood it. After a couple minutes, both Sam and Jon realize that Jon is being groomed for command. So why on earth would Alliser be happy? Maybe he's just reveling in the 2 minutes of pain that Jon is about to have. Now, Pip gives Jon a life isn't fair speech, but in the book it's actually a guy named Darion. Darion was a singer who was falsely accused of rape, and later makes a voyage with Sam on his way to Oldtown. He has a somewhat important role to play in the Arya story, but somehow I doubt we'll see him season 6. Meanwhile, back in King's Landing, Renly approaches Ned about a coup. Now this scene plays a little differently in the book compared to the show. In the show it seems that both men know that Joffrey is a bastard and Stannis is the rightful heir. However, Renly doesn't think anybody likes Stannis, which is ironic considering Stannis is such a fan favorite. However, in the book there seems to be some confusion about how much each man knows. Ned wants to form a council to determine succession, and he wants to wait for Robert to die. Now, because Renly was trying to marry Margaery to Robert, I think it's likely that Renly knows about the incest. But he doesn't necessarily know that Ned knows. But regardless, waiting for Robert to die is just not an option for Renly. Renly rightly believes that the Lannisters don't play by the rules. Now in our next scene, Ned sends a letter to Stannis telling him that he's the heir. Now in the book, his guards never make it out of King's Landing. They're killed first. However, it all doesn't matter, as Stannis already knows he's the heir. That's why he fled King's Landing. He and Jon Arryn uncovered the incest together. Now next, Ned calls in Littlefinger, and Littlefinger gives the advice that Ned should support Joffrey. Now if you recall, Stannis wanted to shut down all brothels, so certainly Littlefinger wouldn't want Stannis to be king. And in the book he outlines the main problem with Stannis. Stannis and the Tyrells have a beef. Mace Tyrell let Stannis almost starve to death in the siege at Storm's End. Nonetheless, despite the fact that Stannis is a losing proposition, Littlefinger claims that Ned has the Gold Cloak's support. Meanwhile, north of the Wall, Jon and Sam are saying their vows in front of heart trees. Now in the books, this is a grove of 9 trees, all facing inward. Jon specifically says that other godswoods never have more than 2 or 3 weirwoods, so the sheer number of weirwoods is quite unusual. But the other thing to note is that the configuration is the same as on the Isle of Faces in the God's Eye. The trees face inward to observe the vows. Now later in the book, there's a weirwood-faced door that Sam opens in the Night Fort. I wonder if it's all Night's Watchmen that can open that door, or if it's just men that have sworn in front of the heart trees. Meanwhile in the Dothraki Sea, Daenerys reflects on the assassination attempt. One thing that's very interesting about the book is that Daenerys becomes Viserys. If you recall, prior to Viserys' death, Daenerys wasn't very worried about Westeros. She wanted the simple life, and she was rather patient about the Dothraki procrastination. The minute Viserys dies, she starts pestering Drogo about the invasion. And now, after the wine cellar incident, she knows what it's like to run from Robert's hired knives. In the book, she even talks about how Robert has woken the dragon. In the show, we don't get Daenerys' inner monologue, so we don't know how much Viserys' ghost affects her. So Drogo vows to invade Westeros, rape all the women, and enslave the children. I always thought it was unfair that Hizdahr took so much flack for being a former slaver when Drogo was an active slaver. Drogo literally vows to expand slavery to Westeros, and yet he's the beloved Sun and Stars. And the wine cellar is dragged behind the Khalasar until he dies. This is actually one of the visions that the House of the Undying gives to Dany when she's in Qarth. It may explain why they wanted to kill her. Meanwhile in King's Landing, Robert has died and everyone's heading to the throne room. Now weirdly in this scene, Littlefinger tells Ned in front of Varys that he has the city watch. Yes, Varys has spies and pretty much knows everything, but I truly doubt Littlefinger would be so bold to say this information in front of him. And I doubt Varys would want to be associated with Littlefinger and his actions right now. In the book, Varys blends into the background and we forget about him in the confrontation. Next, Ned enters the throne room. What's missing are all of Robert's tapestries. In the book, Robert's tapestries are a continuing little mystery. The Targaryens had dragon skulls on the walls of the throne room, and Robert had them taken down and replaced with scenes of hunt and battle. Who is in these tapestries and what battles they depict is not revealed. But Cersei later takes down these tapestries, and then Littlefinger requests them for some reason. They arrive in the Vale, and then Littlefinger gives them to a lord named Nestor Royce. We still have no idea if these tapestries are important. Next, Ned confronts Cersei. Now it's important to note that there's a specific reason why Ned showed so much mercy to Cersei and Joffrey. In the book, prior to this scene, Ned is haunted by a dream of Aegon, Rhaegar's dead son. The Lannisters showed no mercy to the Targaryen children during Robert's rebellion. The dream reminds him that he's morally superior and has to show mercy. Of course, it's that exact attitude that gets him killed. It's important to note that Ned's dreams kill him. One convinces him to stay in King's Landing, and the other convinces him to show mercy to Cersei. Whoever is sending dreams to Ned has it in for him. And in our final moment, there's a double cross, and Littlefinger has a dagger to Ned's throat. Now it's unclear in both the book and the show if this is the dagger that was used to attack Bran. In the book, Littlefinger slides a dagger from Ned's sheath. And then in A Clash of Kings, Littlefinger is in possession of the Valyrian dagger. It's quite likely that this was the moment that the property changed hands. And that's all for episode 1.7. See you in episode 1.8.